My name is Erik Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9-to-5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast with your host, Erik Van Horn. And today it's just me. We're going to be talking about semi-absentee ownership and the state of that in the franchise industry today. And I've been in this industry for almost 20 years, all of it really in semi-absentee ownership. And there's some things that I'm seeing that have changed over the years and that I want to get out there into the world to owners that own in this environment today, people that have just purchased and those that are going to be purchasing, because I don't feel like there's enough really good information out there. And I have a private Facebook group. They're watching online right now. And in this franchisee Facebook group that I have, I ask them questions and I get answers from them. And they give me some topics that I get to discuss on podcasts like this today. So I'm going to dive right into it. The word semi-absentee is something that a lot of people didn't understand. And then I think until they started to look at franchises, and then once they started to dive into franchising, that's a buzzword. Everybody's talking about semi-absentee. 10, 15 years ago, when I was in the thick of it, it really wasn't a thing. There's very few franchises that claim to be semi-absentee. And I think of most of those really were. So semi-absentee franchise ownership or passive ownership or semi-passive ownership, there is what people think it is, what it actually is, and there's some other things around that I want to discuss too. But what people think it is anybody, if you have a job, you can buy a franchise and you can work that franchise part-time while you work your job full-time. That is probably at its most basic level what people think it is, because that does actually work for some people and it absolutely does not work for other people. So what is it actually? I think this has to do with timing as well. So there are times in the business that you have to devote a lot more time into your business, and that's really early on. Depending what kind of business it is, it depends on what kind of time load you have on the front end of it. Because I've been in businesses where there was a lot of work on the front end, but boy, once we open up those doors, like the workload just really dropped off. And it depends who we had hired. So there's a lot of things that go into semi-absentee ownership, but I want to give, I asked Jeremy Bollington, he's part of my Facebook group, and I put a comment out there, and this was his comment. He said, I fear way too many consultants, and that's one of the things I do. I help people buy franchises, so I am a franchise consultant. And so what he is saying as a consultant rings true to me. So he says, I fear too many consultants chasing a deal are only too happy to encourage people to go this route, meaning semi-absentee. Ultimately, it is also the franchisor that should really be focused on if you are in a service or people-oriented concept and have a candidate who has a 9-to-5 type of job, who doesn't have prior business ownership experience and who doesn't have a manager lined up, i.e. they think they can go out and hire a manager very easily. He said, this should be a big red flag and you should probably really be probing on this. So he said some really good things in there that I want to dive into. And it's true. So too many consultants are pushing semi-absentee because it sounds so good out there. If you can keep your job and start a business and live happily ever after, that's a really good thing. And I do see that happening. I also see the flip side of that. So I'm going to try to talk about both sides. And then especially if you have not been in business ownership before, your first business requires a lot more work than your second one. Even your first location requires a lot more work than your second or third location. So I'll dive into that later once we start talking about validation, but there's really some important things that you need to understand as you're talking to franchisees to validate, like, is what I'm hearing actually ringing true? Like, is it true what I'm hearing from people. It may be true factually, but there may be some nuances that completely change how you see the opportunity. And that might be for good or for bad. But we're going to talk about that today as well. The other thing he says, if you don't have a manager lined up, there's a lot of truth to that. If you don't have a manager or the ability to get a manager, or like the ability to be okay having a manager quit on you at the wrong time, if all those things are on the top of your mind, like keeping you up at night, that's another big red flag. And you should really be probing on this in his words. And I'm going to talk about that. So there are a couple different things. So many franchisors are claiming to be semi-absentee today. And so what I think they might be semi-absentee, but the question that you need to ask yourself, it's not if they are semi-absentee or not. It's not like that. It's a yes or no. It's when. So it's not if, but when are they semi-absentee? And are you able to go through that time period when it's a bit more hands-on or maybe a lot more hands-on? So the thing is, you just need to ask the right questions. And one of the things is like when. So as you're talking to franchisees and they have been open up and maybe they're on their third location and you think, oh my gosh, they're on their third location and they're on vacation and they're not even going to be there for grand opening. Guys, I've been there. Like that is my life. I go on vacations. I do things. I am probably the last 10 grand openings or soft openings that I've had in all of my businesses. I haven't been there, but I'm not the normal person. So that's why you shouldn't just go off of somebody that's opened up a lot, because it's very different when you've been in the game, when you've been franchising for a while, or if you own businesses for a while. And it's even more different when you've been in a particular franchise and you're on your third location. Because this is just my opinion, and a lot of my friends feel the same way. Your third location is probably your easiest one to open. Your first one is really hard. It takes a lot to get that one open and just a lot of stress and pressure. Your second one, you think, gosh, I've done it. I learned so much. I made so many mistakes in my first one. For sure, my next one, number two, is going to be a lot easier. It is in some ways. And in other ways, typically, revenue has decreased. Things have not gone as planned because you're pulling your best people away from your first one. So sales decline in that one, or you keep them there and you don't have your best people at your second one when you had them at your first one, and your second one doesn't do as well. So in other words, this is when you start the juggling act, and it's really hard to do both really well. And that's when, you're going into a different phase of ownership, going from one location to two or going into multiple units. But once you hit that third location, it gets a lot easier because you have people from two locations and you can pull them away. They know it. They've done it. They've done the pre-sales. They've done everything, not just once, but some of them twice. So now they go into it and it's a lot easier to do. And this is when typically a lot of people owners are not that involved in location number three. I mean, how else can it be if you see some of these people own multiple brands in multiple different areas and in multiple locations? How can they have 20 of something if they're always there? So the point of it is when you're validating and you are just talking to multi-unit owners who tell you how great it is, well, they are probably telling you the 100% truth. Like that is the goal. That's where you want to get. But the question you have to ask yourself, do you have the staying power? Do you have the wherewithal to get to 3 locations? And that is something that really only you can answer. So I'm going to talk about, I'm in one franchise in 3 different groups right now, 3 different ownership groups, and they're all doing a little bit different. Like the results of the franchises are different. I'm going to tell you why. So one of them, both of us are hands-off owners. I mean, like we are really hands-off, and that one is struggling the most. Big surprise, right? And then I have other ones that I have either an owner or a manager that are really in the market, focused on the day-to-day of the business. And big surprise, those ones are doing better. And I'm okay with it because they don't have to all be home runs right out of the gate for me because I have a diverse portfolio. And so I'm okay with it. So if you were to ask somebody like me that's been in the game for a while that has multiple locations, I know they're not all going to perform the same. And I have to have the staying power to be able to get to 3 locations so I can see which ones are just awesome locations and which ones are average and which ones are weaker. Let me give you another story. So when I first started in the salon business, we went into one market and we got a killer deal on real estate. We went into it and we did average. Like we did okay. I think we probably did better than average, but we were working hard. Like us 4 owners knew what was going on in the business. On our second location, we really pulled back and we weren't as active. We put a lot of weight into our manager, and that one didn't do as well. I mean, actually, let me rephrase that. That one did very poorly. That was our worst location out of 12 locations. So that one was, for all intents and purposes, a dog. That was our dog. And it happened to be our second one. Thank God it wasn't our first one, because I would have thought this franchise is a dog. But no, it wasn't the franchise. And then our third location just knocked it out of the park. Like that one, we couldn't have tried to slow it down. We couldn't have tried to make that any less successful. Like, because the same management team that opened up number 2 opened up number 3, and it was a smashing success. And so we start to make all these different assumptions on why one's great. We blame it on the franchisor. We blame it on the management team. We take all the credit when it's great. Like I'll take all the credit on number 3, but the truth is location matters, market matters. Like where you put your locations matters. And that location is in an area, like it's not the business graveyard. It's like every business that goes into this particular market, like seems to have just fantastic success. And the other ones, may have gotten better real estate deals, but we didn't see the success. And as we look back, we're like, why didn't we do more of those? Like the number 3s where we made a bunch of money and less of the other ones. And the funny thing is we almost let that deal go on number 3. And the reason we almost let it go is because it was more rent than we had paid for the other ones, like way more. So we're like, we have to do really well to be able to make this one a winner. Well, the truth of it is, like, we couldn't screw it up. That was like the best thing that we did. The point of it is, like, if those locations were each owned by one owner, each different owners, and you were to validate with them, you talk to the first one, they're like, yeah, this franchise is okay. Or you would talk to the guy that owned the second one, the dog, who would have been like, this franchise is horrible, run. And if you were talk to the last one, if there was only one owner, and if it was me, I'd be like, this thing is so easy. Like, we cannot screw this thing up. This franchise is absolutely the best thing. The reality is, same ownership group, same management, same everything, different location, and we learned some stuff along the way. So don't just you need to know who you're talking to. You need to know the background story, or you're not going to get the full picture. So if you're talking to somebody that is really excited and they have like all kinds of flexibility, they have a lot of franchise experience, this is like their third thing that they've done, you need to pause and ask yourself, start asking them some different questions, not franchisor related, but franchisee related. Take them to your story. Now, I was just talking to somebody 2 days ago, and actually on my whiteboard, you can't see it, it's just out of view. But here's what I have: pain level 10, because he's working 80 to 100 hours a week. I marked it up there. He's working 80 to 100 hours a week. And he's like, just cannot wait to get out. And he said, I've never worked for somebody whose job I want. So this is somebody that just cannot wait to get out of corporate America. And he doesn't have the time to get into a semi-absentee franchise, even though if he talks to the owner of like salon number 3, it would seem like a no-brainer. And the problem is, people are getting sold out there today like that. Like, there are franchise consultants, franchise salespeople that would happily sell that person because sometimes those people actually knock it out of the park. They can get that number 3 and it will be really good for them, but it will be super hard for them. That person needs to ask the questions. Like, he needs to ask himself the questions. How am I going to do under pressure? Guys, pressure will come. That is an absolute 100% given. And when I mean pressure, you got to factor in the manager quits. Like, when you open up or you're about ready to open up and you have one person trained, that person is probably going to quit. You have to plan for that. You have to plan for pre-sales, like everything that you do before you open, you have to plan on that being weaker than you'd budgeted for. You have to plan on something being delayed, and not just like something that's not important, something really important being delayed, and that causing a chain reaction of other things. And guys, what I'm speaking of right now are things that happened to me in the last 2 months in one of my openings. I mean, everything that I just shared with you, like, that's it. You need to expect expenses higher than what you anticipate them to be. Even if you figure on the high side, expect them to be higher. Again, that's me. You need to expect revenue to be underperforming. Again, that's me. And yet I know that this pressure that I'm under is not a big deal, because what I just described to you is business ownership. Like, that is owning a business. The difference between that and working in a job is you, the responsibility is on you. Like, you are responsible for your employees. You are responsible for your customers. You are responsible to pay rent to the landlord. Like, the responsibility is the pressure. And it's a lot easier to make decisions when you're in a boardroom or you're making them for somebody else's business than it is for your own business. So do not underestimate the power of the pressure. Now, for me, all of this stuff I just described to you, not a big deal, because I expect it. And I know that I had the wherewithal to overcome it, because I know this may be, when I open up, my number 3 where I cannot stop the success. It might be my dog, and it might be an average one. I don't know until it's actually open, but I'm okay with whatever it is because I believe in it. So, the pressure is really, really tough, and please do not underestimate that. So we talked about, like, semi-absentee ownership, and again, I want to take it back to you. And there's a couple things here that I want to get into. What type of person are you? So can you handle the pressure? Can you handle the bank account going down and able to make decisions to spend more money on marketing, to hire the right person and not lower your standards because the bank account's going down? That's a big thing. And it's really hard to do. It's easy in theory. You're like, yeah, Erik, of course, that's what I would do. When the pressure's on, it's very different. So here's another thing, like delegator. Are you a good delegator? Let me tell you about me. I'm a fantastic delegator, and that's not to brag on myself. It's probably a weakness more than anything, because I rely on a lot of other people for a lot of things, and it might be called laziness. It might be called a good delegator. I'll let my friends and family be the judge of that. But I am a really good delegator, and most of the time. So even being a person that can easily delegate and give that manager responsibility, I still have issues with it. Even the other day, I'll tell you a little story that happened at my house. I had someone doing some work for me, and I went down to go see what they were doing and just to say hi, really. And they were on the phone, trying to get a dumpster to come out to my hobby ranch so I could throw some stuff in it and get it hauled off. But I want it there every week. And so he started talking to the trash company. And because when you live in the country, you have a company that you pay that comes and does your trash for you. It's not like city or anything like that. So they were on the call with the on the phone with the trash company. And I could just tell, like, they were talking apples and oranges. He was telling the trash company, like, he was thinking and painting a picture in their mind of this big dumpster, like the big roll-off dumpsters. And in our mind, we're like, we just want a little dumpster that you would see at a grocery store in the back. So they were talking apples and oranges. I was giving hand signals. I'm like, no, doing all the kinds of things that somebody doesn't want you to do when you're on a phone call. And I did it all. And then Pretty soon I hear click and I'm like, hey, what happened? He's like, basically he said, you got in the way. And at that moment, I knew I did. I went up to the house. I saw him the next day. I'm like, oh my gosh. I started laughing. I'm like, what happened the other day when we were in my shop? I said, I was out of line and I saw what happened. Like he just shut it down. Like he would have come to the same conclusion that I was wanting to come to and that person was wanting to come to. But because I got involved, he completely shut down. And it's so easy to do that. So even if you are a good delegator, if you're anything like me, you're going to have to pull back and let people make mistakes and be okay with that. And I'm really good at that for the most part. But I just saw that even just the other day. So are you a good delegator or are you a micromanager? And if you're a micromanager, you will have a hard time. I mean, no doubt about it, you will have a hard time. And not only that, when I say have a hard time, it's not just managing and letting go, but I'm talking about keeping employees, like keeping your key person. If you can't hire someone and that can make decisions, that is good at what they do, if you can't do that and give them the freedom to make mistakes, you're going to lose that person. Then you're going to have someone that needs you to tell them what to do every second of the day. And that is the last thing that you want as a semi-absentee franchisee, as a semi-absentee business owner. So you just have to take a hard look at yourself and see, are you a good delegator or not? Are you a micromanager? So let's talk about like how I do it. And this is something that I don't think it's for everybody, but this is what I've discovered over owning like 7 or 8 different franchises over almost 20 years. And you have to be okay overpaying your manager. And I don't mean overpaying someone for what they're worth. I mean over hiring, like having a job position that is, let's just call it at a $50,000 job position level, and you upping that to a $70,000 job position level. You have to be okay with that. It's not in your budget. Like it's really not in your budget. Like you'll probably budget 40,000 when I would budget 70 to 80,000. And the reason I do that is to hire those A players, is to hire the people like the district operational managers, people that can make decisions, people that I trust, people that can be okay even making mistakes because they know that they're always getting better. People that are always wanting to improve. People that will say, hey, Eric, let me do that for you. Hey, Eric, I've got this. Hey, Eric, don't worry about this. Those are the types of people that I want. They're really honest. Like they know what they're good at and they know what they're not good at. And you have that open, honest communication with them. But like I want to overhire for that position. So if it just needs a low-level management position, I want to put a mid-level manager in there. If it asks for a mid-level manager position, I want to put a director of operation in there so they can go in there, understand it, and then fill it behind them once they start to go open their second or third location. And that's exactly what I do. But this increases the budget. I mean, this goes back to the financial pressure. If you're not okay with financial pressure, then you are not going to be okay making that hire. And what I do is I haven't always done this. It's not like I know everything about this, by the way. So I hope everybody knows that. I'm just giving you a little bit of insight into my limited experience in this whole franchising thing. But like if you don't give equity to the right people, they're going to go find equity someplace else because that's how they're wired. Like the person that I hired to run some locations in Colorado, like she wanted equity. That's what she wanted. Like she wanted that more than anything. And she had the right DNA. She had the right makeup. She had the right experience, a prior experience to be able to come in and do the things that I wanted her and needed her to do. And not only did she have that and what I needed, like that's what drove her. That's what excites her. And it doesn't excite me. Like the things that excite her, like I could care less. So my role in this whole thing is to be looking ahead. Like I want to be looking so far down the road. So when she's coming to me with some type of question, I'm like, hey, this is what I would suggest, or most of the time, this is what I do. What do you think? I always kick it back to them. What do you think? Because I don't want to give them the answers and now they know enough to like tell me what they think and then I'll tell them what I think, because I want them to begin to understand how I think. What would Erik do? What would Erik say? How would Erik respond? And if someone starts to come with those types of a question to me, but already an answer thought out, and then I can either confirm it or be like, you know what, this really isn't that big of a decision. I don't know what the real answer should be, but I let them go with it. And then they get the freedom to be able to start making decisions and they become a better decision maker. Now, these types of people don't want to come in just for one location mostly. They want the bigger thing. And so you have to be able to paint the picture for them and deliver on that. It's not enough just to like paint a vision and just have these big vision boards and just to be all talk and never actually deliver. That's not, because then you lose trust and you want that person, your key people, you want trust in them. So whenever I go into a new market and I want to be hands off, one of the ways I protect myself to be hands off and not to get too involved is to have more than one location. Like, I don't want to go into a market, preferably, and just open up one location. Because if I do that, then I'm relying on one manager, and that manager may be overpaid a lot, and I don't want that. I mean, I'm okay with that for a time, but there has to be an end game. So I'm okay overpaying if there's a place for them to go into their next position that is ready for them. So well, this is exactly what I'm doing. I try not to give theory. I try to give you like actually what I'm doing. We did that in the salon business, the solo salon business that I was in. We opened up 3 pretty much back to back. And you guys know the story there. We had a big exit there this year, by the way. Like, we sold all 12 of them to private equity. So that worked out very well. But now I'm doing it all over again. I have 3 locations that I plan to open up in the next 6 months in Denver. One is going to open up the second week in January, most likely. The other is going to, we are just about ready to sign the LOI on, which means you start to go into lease negotiations and probably sign the lease 2 months later. And the other one will probably sign an LOI in a month or 2. And so you can see that I want to open up 3 back to back, because I have my director of operations handling that first one. She's going to open it up. She's actively looking for a manager now. She's going to then put her focus on opening up number 2, backfilling number 1, hiring for number 2. And then, like I said earlier, number 3 is a lot easier. So imagine this. Location number 3 opens up. I have a director of operations basically replacing me as that semi-absentee owner. So I'm really hands off. She's overseeing the 3 of them. In other words, making decisions for them. When I say overseeing, they're decision makers. So she's making decisions on those 3 locations. And let's say manager quits. Like, a manager quits, I probably won't even know about it until like a certain call that we have pre-scheduled, where we go over like bigger things like that. And she will probably come to me and be like, Erik, so-and-so quit. I have 3 people lined up. I've done interviews, 3 interviews on all of them. And would you like to do a 4th and final interview with any of them? And my question to her would be, do I need to? And if she says yes, I'm absolutely going to do it. If she says no, I'm absolutely going to trust her. So you can see, like, this whole thing of semi-absentee franchise ownership, it's not a question of if it's semi-absentee. It's a question of when it's semi-absentee. It still might be a question of if, because some of these things really are not semi-absentee. So everything that I just walked you through is if it is semi-absentee and the answer is yes, then it's when is it semi-absentee? Because I think that's the bigger question if the answer is yes, because that comes later on. And let me just back up a little bit and just give the state of franchising right now. So in franchising, let me tell you what somebody just said. Many consultants think somebody is me. Actually, I put this as a post back to somebody. I said, many consultants think they know way more than they do. And that is dangerous, since they have not lived it in the real world themselves. They are just telling people what they're being told by the franchisor. So I posted that in my private Facebook group, which if you're a franchisee, please join that group, because that's the truth. And one of the reasons for this podcast is to get that truth out there. Like I want anybody looking at buying a semi-absentee franchise to listen to this, whether they work with me or don't work with me. I want them to hear this because here's the state of the industry. You've got consultants. And back in the day, consultants used to be like pretty good. Now, a consultant, they don't have to have any type of criteria. All they have to have is a phone and a computer and people calling them. And you can buy leads now. So you can just buy a lead from some website and that's how some people are buying franchises. They put their information in somewhere and then they end up talking to somebody who tells them they're really good because their experience is, I'm a real estate agent. And so now, and then I go to 2 conferences a year and there's 100 different franchises there. So that makes me an expert. Like that's the expert level of a lot of consultants out there. Not all of them, because there's some really good ones out there. And a lot of them are my friends and some of them I don't know, but there's some really, really, really good consultants out there that will take care of you. You just need to make sure you're one of those that will take care of you. So you've got these consultants that are wanting to make money, and they not only want to make money, but they think they're an expert because they had the expert come and tell them all about the inside of this franchise. Meaning a semi-absentee franchisor went and said, hey, we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. We're semi-absentee 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, whatever it is. This is who we want. This is who our candidate is. And then you got the consultants just sending them leads and being like, hey, you should do this. This is a semi-absentee franchise. Go check it out. The franchisor is telling them how great it is. And at the end of the day, none of this stuff is happening that I just told you about. Absolutely none of it, unless you're working with somebody like me. And so what you need is to be aware of, like, you are being sold every step of the way. Like, make no mistake about it. If the consultant needs to make money because this is their thing, then they're probably, have a desire for you to like buy a franchise. The same with the franchise salesperson and same with the franchisor. Now, that's a generic statement because I know a lot of franchisors that will kick people out of Discovery Day. They will not approve people because they're just not the right fit. And there definitely is that side. And I love those franchises that will actually say, no, they're not the right fit. But there's a lot of them out there, and you just need to know which ones are what. So that's what's happening in this franchise world today. You got really good salespeople, really good franchisors, and here's the last thing: territory is getting sold out really quickly because of everything that I just told you. Like, and sometimes territory is like they use it as a sales tactic, and sometimes it's 100% the truth. Like, their territory is about to be sold if you don't buy it. In certain markets with certain brands, that's 100% true. But there's just so many territories being sold, and so what that means is franchisees don't have enough time to mature within a system for the system to grow slowly and in a strong way to make them a better franchisor because they're growing so fast. And most, not all, but most really can't handle and support franchisees with such rapid growth. So you just need to know that as well. So I think the main point that I want you to walk away with is just those things that you need to ask yourself. Like, are you able to devote what you need to for that franchise that you buy to be successful? And franchising has completely changed my life. Like my life today, because of the franchises that I've owned over the last almost 20 years, has given me a life that, I just pinch me because I cannot believe it. And the freedom and the flexibility is just absolutely unreal. But I'm not, the overnight success is like the last, 15, 20 years. It is not the last franchise that I bought. It's not the last thing that I bought and why I have this lifestyle. It was work, and we put in the work, and I had the time to be able to do it when I first started. I want to share this one last story with you. So when I first started, I worked hours and hours and hours. I remember, and it's a semi-absentee business, but I grew really fast. And I remember leaving when it was dark and coming home when it was dark. And that does not sound like semi-absentee. It was a seasonal business, so that didn't last very long. But, for most people, like they would not be able to do that. But with that said, one of my best friends was a franchisee in that first franchise that I bought. I did not have a full-time job because I was selling franchises during the off season and running them during the on season. He had a full-time job the whole time, which means I think it was like 2 to 3 weeks of vacation every year. He used those strategically. Meaning like when he was getting ready to open the most critical time of that business, he took vacation. So he wasn't out, in the Caribbean or in Hawaii or on a ski hill. He was working in his business, and he did that for years before he completely pulled back. And now we, him included, can afford to hire people to do that. It's worth it for me to spend $100,000 or $200,000 extra for good people to be able to make those decisions and do that type of work for me, where I get to lead them. I get to help them. I'm always encouraging them and I'm looking out for them. And that's the status of semi-absentee ownership today. So I'm going to stick around in this Facebook group a little bit longer. Again, if you want to, and I'm going to ask some questions in there. If anybody has any questions in that Facebook group, why don't you guys go ahead and start asking? I'm going to shut down this podcast. And if you are interested in buying a franchise and you want to see if I might be able to help you, go to ilovefranchising.com and you'll get set up on a call with my main man, Michael. He'll have an initial call with you to see if we're a good fit. If we're not, we are going to help you. Our goal is to give you access to information. Maybe we can refer you to somebody, whatever we can do if we can't help you ourselves. But thanks for listening. Please be sure to leave this podcast a 5-star review, and any comments would be great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.